Are you sure I can do this? Hell yeah. Do all the things. What? You're no fun. Huh? Not you. Clara said you're not allowed to do any women. You're in enough trouble as it is on that front. I'm not gonna do any women. Countess Wagner's laughter chimed over the message spell. That's so cute. Anyway, you have your instructions. You've been doing a good job so far, so we're not too worried about any screw-ups on your part. You've already read my reports. Seems like things have gotten a bit worse since I was last out there, but, all in all, they're still in line with our expectations. What do you think about what happened with the merchants? I think that if Speckled Mare had accepted my invitation back then, it wouldn't have happened. That's just how the wagon rolls, I guess. Clara's giving me some funny looks, so I should get going. Don't be naughty. Liam frowned as the message spell ended. He had chosen to contact Countess Wagner because she was the most easygoing out of his direct superiors at the Ministry of Transportation, but she was probably a bit too easygoing at times. It certainly wasn't how one expected a noblewoman to act. He tried to pin her behavior on the fact that she was a merchant noble, but, then again, Countess Corlin and Baroness Garnier were merchant nobles as well and didn't act like she did. He tucked the empty scroll case in his hand away and returned to Countess Beaumont. The young noblewoman was seated at her table again, wrapped up in her layers of blankets. Her blue eyes gazed up at him expectantly from the shadows of her makeshift cowl. Do you like doing that? Liam gestured loosely at her blankets. I admit it's quite cozy once one gets used to it. The Countess averted her gaze, but the reason why I started in the first place was because it's dreadfully chilly here. Now that he thought back on it, none of the windows had any drapes and the library's fireplace was dark and cold. There wasn't even any firewood stocked beside it. Even the rack meant to hold said firewood was missing. Is the entire manor like this? The Countess flinched at his question. It can't be helped, she said defensively. There was no money. I let go of the household staff and had to pay them with things from around the manor. The rest went towards servicing our debts. So it was just bad poetry, after all. How do you eat? Liam asked. The men wandering around here bring food. I don't particularly enjoy it when they appear. They all lay the most lecherous looks upon me. The Countess turned pale and shuddered, as if recalling some unpleasant experience. Considering the Eight Fingers' nature, he was surprised that nothing beyond that had happened to her. Since she was a part of the Sorceress Kingdom's schemes, they may have feared reprisal for messing with Lady Albedo's plans, but does she even care about that sort of thing? Probably not. One shouldn't expect a demon to have human sensibilities in the first place, but that was their mistake to make. Whatever the reason was, it had worked in the Countess' favor. If they haven't done anything to you by now, Liam said, then they probably have a good reason not to. Instead of worrying about that, you should think about what you can do to fix your situation. Does that mean you've received approval from your superiors for whatever it is you had in mind? Yeah, Liam replied. Just so you know, you have to come with me. The young noblewoman's head popped out of her blanket. Of course, she flashed a brilliant smile. I would absolutely love to accompany you. We're going into the mountains. What? The mountains are dangerous, Countess Beaumont told him. Even adventurers die up there, you know. We'll be fine, Liam said. I have to go and inspect one of the mines nearby. If people can live up there, it shouldn't be that dangerous. A conflicted expression filled the Countess' face as Liam presented his reasoning. Are you an adventurer? I thought you already decided I was an assassin. Then are assassins stronger than adventurers? I don't think it works that way, Liam said. Look, I'm not asking you to come, I said that you're coming with me. Why you're ordering me? Is that how you see things? Countess Beaumont deflated slightly as she shifted on her seat. Liam waited patiently for her reply. After a few seconds, the young noblewoman looked up at him with her big, blue eyes. You won't abandon me, will you, Liam? This was supposed to be a yes or no question. Being the schemy schemer that she was, Countess Wagner had come up with a number of uses for Countess Beaumont. The first thing he needed to do was find out how readily she would submit to the Sorceress Kingdom's authority. He might be a low-level official, but his instructions came from someone much higher. Of course, he hadn't yet named any names, so she still assumed that he was there at Lady Albedo's bidding. Your answer, Countess Beaumont? The Countess remained silent several moments longer, then visibly steeled herself. I have no proof of who you are, she told him. If I am to follow your instructions, I need to see at least that much. Countess Beaumont shied away as Liam's hand went to his belt. He produced a leather scroll case and placed it on the table. The young noblewoman picked it up, examining its exterior before removing the cap and emptying its contents into her palm. She stared at the seal for a long moment before breaking it and unfurling the scroll. Her eyes went back and forth as her mouth moved silently. His mission planners anticipated that he would need to enlist the assistance of a collaborator from the new faction that they had fostered in Riestize, so they had given him that scroll to use when he needed it. After getting his first glimpse into the local nobles' behavior, however, he figured that they were more likely to compromise his mission than anything else. Countess Beaumont rose from her seat, somehow managing to perform an elegant curtsy with her blankets. I am at your service, Liam, she said. Please take good care of me. Don't worry, Liam gently placed a hand on her head, I will. First test passed, I guess. Despite her initial panic, Countess Beaumont had rallied her wits and produced one of the better results. Whether it was due to recent developments or the result of an education that hadn't had the opportunity to apply itself, she had proven that she wasn't a heedless idiot, so far. Mr. Liam. He turned his attention back to the Countess. She had shrunk in on herself again, blushing slightly as he patted her head. Liam snatched his hand back and cleared his throat. We'll be heading to the mines to get some help for your monster problems, he told her. I'd also like it if you'd help explain some things to me. I've asked around about how things work around here, but I haven't had the chance to get things from a noble's perspective yet. Of course, Mr. Liam, Countess Beaumont nodded. So long as everything is as it should be, it will be well within my capabilities to explain everything to you. Where would you like us to begin? We can talk about it on the road tomorrow, Liam told her. We'll be leaving early tomorrow, so you should get some rest while you can. Also, you can just call me Liam. The Countess quietly nodded and reached for the guttering candle on the table. Liam turned to leave, but then there was a tug on his pant leg. Wait, the young noblewoman said, please stay with me, Liam. Why? Why? Because I don't like it here. It's lonely and empty and cold. You promised to take good care of me. Compared to sleeping in an alley exposed to the elements and potential attackers, Liam thought the manor far preferable. The Countess' desperate expression, however, suggested that she had been dumped into a desolate wasteland populated by ravenous predators. I can walk you to your solar, at least, Liam sighed. I don't sleep in my solar, Countess Beaumont said. The 8 fingers took the place over. They bring in women every night and sometimes I can hear them, anyway, I sleep here now. In the library? One room is as good as another when the entire manor has been stripped bare. Liam frowned at the young noblewoman's thoroughly miserable expression. How much of it was due to her change in lifestyle? How much was because of her situation as a whole? Not many people would be very happy if their expectations of a promising future were betrayed. As far as he knew, the usual destination for people in the Countess' situation in Riestize was a brothel, an underground slave market, or, if they were lucky, becoming a mistress to someone wealthy. None of those outcomes had much to do with the role which she had been trained for her whole life. He rummaged around for the same magic items that he had used at Claire's home. The Countess watched him curiously as activated the heating hoop and fashioned a makeshift lampshade out of the books on the table. You haven't seen magic items like these before? He asked as he activated his magical light and placed it between the books. I have, Countess Beaumont said. How come your family doesn't use them? Or did you sell them off? We've never used them, the Countess replied, not even in the city. Most people have no trust in such devices. My Lord Father would always say that we've been using firewood and candles for generations and there was no reason to change something that worked perfectly fine. But aren't magic items like these cheaper in the long run? The Countess gave the question some thought. If they were handed down as heirlooms, perhaps, she said. Otherwise, no one would be able to justify the cost. How much does magical lighting cost here? If I recall correctly, anywhere between 4 to 8 platinum coins, depending on the workmanship. Huh? Is that in trade or Aristides currency? Aristides currency, of course. Was that better? Technically, it was. Realistically, it wasn't. I bought these as a package for 5 gold trade coins, Liam said. Why is it so expensive here? It's not expensive, the Countess said, it's normal. You won't find a better price anywhere else in the kingdom. That went a long way toward explaining why he hadn't seen the simple utility items since leaving Ravel. A single magic light would take a lifetime to pay itself off. Anyone who purchased one would see it stolen in short order and the value of a life was worth far less. I see, Liam said. That's interesting to know. Well, good night. An awkward silence stretched between them before Countess Beaumont rose from her seat. She shed her outer layer of blankets and pushed them under the table before crawling out of sight. Good night, Liam. MHM. Don't you need to rest, as well? I'm good. You won't do anything to me while I'm sleeping, right? Nope. You won't be going anywhere? Only if I need to. Eventually, the Countess quieted down, her endless worries replaced by soft and steady. Once the Countess didn't need them anymore, he would arrange for them to be delivered to Rantel. Before dawn the following morning, Liam poked Countess Beaumont with the toe of his boot. The girl stirred, but didn't rouse. MMH, 15 more minutes, Clara. He poked her again. We're going soon, Liam told her. I need to see some people while you get ready. Countess Beaumont's eyes popped open. She sat up on her crumpled bedding, smacking her head on the table above her. Owie, she moaned. Put together whatever paperwork you need for when we're up there. We'll be back in town after we're done. Still half asleep, the Countess murmured a vague affirmative. Liam left the magical light and heating hoop with her, hopping out of the window through which he had entered. The security he noted the previous evening was completely absent, so he had even less trouble making his way back into the town. He found Reed and his gang still passed out in the same pub. Reed, Liam said as he shook the man's shoulder. Reed. HGN? Time for work. Is there a wagon heading up to the mines this morning? The woodsman raised his head and rubbed his groggy eyes. Yeah, he said. A few go out every morning. Not till it's light, though. We need to make some preparations before we go, Liam told him. Get your men together and ready for the road. Reed dragged himself to his feet, moving to rouse the other men around the common room. Liam scanned their surroundings with a frown. Where's Olin? He asked. Probably went to see the town boss with Francis, Reed answered. There, borrowing the Beaumont estate from the Countess. So I noticed, Liam said. What's the relationship between all of the different gangs here? Olin's the head of procurement, so he's technically the top dog around here. No one likes his ass, though. What does procurement do? Liam asked. Sources resources from the countryside, basically, Reed replied. With all of the changes recently, his division's become the biggest earner in the syndicate. Guy's got big plans now, no doubt. It'd be better if he just behaved himself, Liam muttered. That's not how his type works. You probably couldn't count the number of people he's used, betrayed, and killed on his way to the top. What about you and your men? Us? It's as you can see, I guess. We're just happy surviving in this mess. Does that mean you're up for some legitimate work? What's this, now? I could use a squad of rangers for the next little while, Liam said. Countess Beaumont needs an escort that knows their way around the territory. Reed and a few of his men stopped what they were doing to give Liam a set of questioning looks. We are not rangers, Reed said. Look, Liam said, if 5 goblins showed up to raid your village, what would you do? I'd feather those green little bastards with arrows is what I'd do, Reed spat. See? Someone from a farming village would try to run or hide. That's because they're soft. Call it what you want, Liam shrugged, it's just that big of a difference. You'll be paid after each leg of the escort. In real money. Really? Yeah. I noticed Olin doesn't pay you, so you guys have no way to pay for anything. That's not good, especially if you're going to work in Countess Beaumont's retinue. Hold up, how did we get to retinue? That's basically what you'll be acting as. Anything you do will reflect badly on her, so try and stay out of the wrong kinds of trouble. Reed and his men didn't seem to have anything to say about that. Maybe they were already sold on the prospect of being paid. Liam left them to their preparations, making his way back to Beaumont Manor. Near the entrance to the estate, he came across Olin. Following the 8 Fingers executive was a group of men Liam hadn't seen before. Liam, Olin nodded, good timing. I take it we're beginning our tour of the mines today. Yeah, Liam said. Who are these guys? Fresh men for our escort, Olin replied. Every man in the new group was bigger than average and each sported chainmail or better. Their heavy armament might have been useful for combat, but it would probably drag them down on the road. I thought Reed and Francis would be accompanying us, Liam said. I decided it would be better to bring some good fighting men, Olin told him. Things will be getting far more dangerous from here. I'll take your word on that, Liam said. But I also already told Reed and his men to help escort Countess Beaumont. But Reed is wait, did you just say Countess Beaumont? My instructions are to bring her with us, Liam said. I'm not in a position to question my orders. He actually was allowed to question his orders, but the idea that skill and intelligence were valued over brute strength and ruthlessness would be lost on someone like Olin. Given what Liam had learned so far, the man would consider the former a threat. Liam looked up at Olin, whose mouth was working soundlessly. You can still bring them if you want, Liam said. If it's going to be far more dangerous, then it's better to have more fighting strength on hand, right? Right. Then I'll leave the transport arrangements to you, Liam said. I have to go and get Countess Beaumont. Where do we meet you? The northwestern gate, Olin replied. I secured a wagon for us, but I only had supplies prepared for these men here. Reed's gang should be all right, Liam. He was left somewhat perplexed when he discovered Countess Beaumont wrestling with a giant roll of fabric. What are you doing? Liam asked. Packing my things, the Countess answered. Your things are your blankets? The rest is rolled up in the middle. You should know that I don't have much. Besides, they'll make the trip more comfortable. If it rains, it's going to go from comfortable to uncomfortable pretty quick. You'll do something about that, won't you? Liam sighed. Admittedly, what Countess Beaumont wanted to bring wouldn't be a problem once they spread it out over the wagon. It would also be more comfortable, as she had asserted. The problem was that she wasn't prepared for anything else, but that wasn't exactly her fault, given her situation. I arranged for some woodsmen to act as your retinue on this trip, Liam said. They should know what to do. I have a retinue? The young noblewoman blinked. Could it be that you've hired a maid, as well? Did she need a maid? On one hand, she seemed to have gotten along just fine without one. On the other, nobles were pretty big on appearances and hierarchy. There'd be no shortage of hands volunteering to wash her small clothes. I'll think of something, Liam said. You are not going to demand that they have to be a noble as well, yeah? Just a girl who's competent enough to serve as junior staff will do, the Countess replied. I'd just like to have someone who can take care of sundry tasks while I focus on my work. All right, That much, Liam readily agreed with. For all of the criticisms from the common folk for their expansive households, those same households allowed nobles to focus on their jobs. Organizationally, at least, this was in line with the tenets of his faith. The problem was when nobles made themselves to be more than they were supposed to be, which he supposed was something he had been instructed to keep an eye out for. Redeem who can be redeemed. Purge those who are hopelessly lost. Paraphrased, they were two tenets of the faith. Ones he felt especially close to. Being an assassin, he expected to do plenty of the latter, but was surprised to find many opportunities for the former, as well. Liam retrieved his magic items and picked up the roll of blankets for Countess Beaumont. The wagons are already ready, he told her. Are you sure you have everything you need? You are carrying everything that I own, the Countess replied. At least everything that I own which can be transported. He offered her a reassuring smile and gestured to the exit. Then let us be on our way, my lady, he said. It's time to start rebuilding House Beaumont's finances. I don't believe you've specified how I'll be able to do that, Countess Beaumont said as she walked out of the manor with him. I'll be cheating a little bit, Liam admitted, but only for the beginning part. The rest will be up to you. So this is some sort of test? More like reality, Liam said. Everything you do will influence everything else, for better or worse. I guess I shouldn't need to tell you that since you're a noble. Of course. By the time they arrived at the town's northwestern gate, a small line of wagons was waiting for them. Reed and his men stood at the rear of the caravan. Olin, who was standing near the front with his fresh men, came to offer a courteous bow to the Countess. Countess Beaumont, he said. Liam here just informed me that you will be accompanying us on our tour of the mines. It is our honor to have someone of your esteemed position join us. Thank you, Mr. Olin, my lady. Thank you, Mr. Olin, Countess Beaumont smiled. The presence of so many strong men is most reassuring. If danger does come calling, I shall look forward to their acts of valor. Liam eyed the company of men standing behind Olin. Only a few of them showed a positive reaction to the Countess' words. Olin himself didn't seem very impressed. We've set aside an empty vehicle for you to ride in, my lady, Olin gestured to the empty wagon in the middle of the caravan. For your safety, please be sure to stay inside while we're traveling. I'll leave its preparation to your attendants. With that, Olin turned on his heel and returned to the front of the caravan. He exchanged some words with several of the heavily armed men there, but Liam couldn't catch what they were saying. I've got the boys together, Liam, Reed said as he came up to Liam and Countess Beaumont. Why are those other guys here? It looks like Olin had plans of his own, Liam replied. He didn't have anything against you guys coming along, though. But why them? Those are the town boss's thugs. They'll be worse than useless unless we get into a brawl. Hell, I bet they're going to attract monsters. That's something you'll have to ask Olin, Liam said. I still barely have any idea how your organization works out here. No thanks, Reed's expression turned sour. Just saying he'd have done better bringing Francis and them along. Just stick to your tasks and don't give them any excuses to start anything, I guess, Liam said. Oh, Countess Beaumont, this is Reed. He's the sergeant of the squad that I chose to come along with us. They're all woodsmen, so they'll be in and out. It is a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Reed, the Countess inclined her head slightly. If Liam has chosen you and your men for my retinue, you must be quite capable indeed. Reed's mouth opened, then closed again. After standing stone-faced for several moments, he turned away, mumbling something unintelligible. If you can, Liam said, try and fix up that wagon into something the Countess can ride in without getting soaked. We can throw your squad's stuff in there, as well. The woodsman nodded and walked off, calling his men together. Liam smiled slightly at the man's taciturn response. I guess rangers are the same wherever you go, he said. Those are rangers? The Countess' eyes grew wide. Yeah, Liam said. Most of the ones that I know aren't very sociable, but they all know their stuff. They're not trying to be rude, just so you know. I'll keep that in mind. You should go and talk to them about how you want your wagon to be. They might fill it with pine needles or something if you let them decide. The young noblewoman lifted her skirts and hurried off. Liam dumped her roll of blankets into the wagon on his way to the entrance of a nearby alley. He arrived at a familiar old well and knocked on the door to Claire's home. The door creaked open a crack, then fully opened, revealing the smiling barmaid within. "Liam," she held out her arms, "you came back for me." Liam backed away from her enthusiastic response. "I actually came with a job offer," he said. "Countess Beaumont needs an attendant." "You mean a maid?" Claire furrowed her brow. "But I'm not a noble." "The work shouldn't be too different from what you're doing at the pub," Liam told her. "Lady Beaumont just needs someone to take care of everyday things while she's working." "Is this job permanent?" Claire asked. "Will I be a part of a noble's household?" "That's not my decision to make," Liam answered. "But if you do a good job, you might be able to convince the Countess." He couldn't imagine that Claire would refuse such a crazy good opportunity. It wasn't every day that a commoner had the chance to become a noble's retainer. "All right," Claire nodded. "I'll give it a try. Thanks for thinking of me, Liam." MHM. Liam waited in the alley while Claire went to pack her things. Things were going pretty smoothly. On top of that, he had learned his lesson in the Holy Kingdom when it came to dealing with girls. By having Claire attend to Countess Beaumont, he would be able to minimize his interactions with them. That meant, this time around, he would be able to have some peace of mind. "Liam, we need to move." "What's going on?" Liam asked. "This crowd is attracting flies," Olin said. "If we don't get out of here, we're going to be neck-deep in distractions." The Eight Fingers executive cast a disparaging look at the men gathered along the edges of the town's high street. Several groups of them had formed, most looking half asleep or hungover. It took a moment for Liam to realize that they were the retainers of the minor nobles that had been corralled into Beaumont. "All right," Liam nodded, "let's get out of here." Liam guided Claire to the wagon in the middle of the caravan, upon which Countess Beaumont sat amidst the baggage from Reed's squad. Several lengths of lumber, some coils of rope, and an oil tarp lying on the wagon bed looked about as far as they had gotten with their attempt to make the vehicle more suitable for passengers. "Countess Beaumont," Liam said as he fell into step behind the wagon, "this is Claire. She's agreed to work as your maid." The Countess tried to push herself to her feet, but a bump on the road knocked her back onto her rump. She tried to ignore the incident while awkwardly extending a hand. "Welcome, Claire," the young noblewoman smiled. "I know this is all rather unorthodox, but I am pleased to have you in my service." Claire meekly bobbed her head. Liam gave her a nudge. "You are going to have to familiarize Claire with what she has to do, my lady," he said. "That won't be a problem, right?" "It shouldn't be," the Countess replied, "so long as she listens. Come and join me, Claire." The wagon wasn't moving very quickly, but it was somehow still a challenge getting the girl on board. Liam opened the back of the wagon, and, after Claire made several failed attempts to get on, Liam picked her up and tossed her in. The girl landed on the wagon bed with a squeak. Countess Beaumont gave him a cool look. "What?" Liam retreated before something happened to him. He went to join Reed, who was accompanying the wagon a few dozen steps to the side. "We had to move before the nobles woke up," Liam said. "I saw." "What were you doing with the wagon?" "We were going to suspend a canvas over the wagon," Reed replied, "but we got chased off because we were tracking mud on the wagon bed." "Oh. How hard is it to set up?" "Not very. Just need to tie everything together. Anything else you wanted us to do?" "Yeah. Come help me with the wagon. We can talk about it while we finish setting it up." Liam mentally reviewed the instructions that Lady Wagner had given him. She made everything sound so straightforward and everything had worked out so far, but he still harbored doubts over each step. Back at the wagon, Claire was moving bags around at the Countess' direction. They both looked up at him when he hopped onto the back. The Countess gave Claire a pointed look. "Please remove your boots, Liam." "Mr. Liam," Lady Beaumont corrected her sternly. "Mr. Liam. Is she trying to turn her into a maid for real?" Liam pulled off his boots, savoring the feeling of the cool floorboards under his feet. His eyes went to the materials that Reed's men had left in the wagon. "Lady Beaumont," he said. "With your permission, we would like to raise a canvas over the wagon." "That would be wonderful," the Countess smiled. "Thank you, Liam." Claire frowned slightly. Liam reached down to measure out a length of rope. "Is there anything we shouldn't touch?" Liam asked. "It looked like you were doing something just now." "I was just trying to make some space," Lady Beaumont said. "Feel free to move whatever you wish. Claire can put it back later." "Great," Liam said as he picked his way over to the front of the wagon. "By the way, my lady, what are your plans for dinner tonight?" "My plans?" "Yeah, you have a retinue to feed. If the weather goes bad, we won't be able to reach the mines by nightfall." Countess Beaumont bit her lip, looking up at the shrouded peaks nearby. It was a bit cruel to bring up the matter so suddenly, but it wasn't as if there weren't any solutions on hand. Would she ask Olin to share his men's provisions? Or would she impose her needs on a nearby village? There were a few other options as well, according to Lady Wagner. "Mr. Reed," Countess Beaumont said. "My lady? How many of your men would be required to provision us for tonight?" "You mean by hunting?" The woodsman sucked in his lower lip. "4, if it's just us." "Then send 6 ahead of us to do so," the Countess said. "Don't poach from existing tenancies." "Yes, milady." Reed whistled up his men and put together a hunting party. Additionally, he ordered the men escorting the wagon to forage food from the roadside. Liam gave the young noblewoman a thoughtful look. "Did you consider doing anything else?" he asked. "About the provisions?" "That was the first thing that came to mind. Why? I always hear stories about nobles stealing from the people when they're short on something." "You'd only hear stories like that in the lowliest of places," the Countess said. "In reality, those sorts of actions would be counterproductive. Never mind that, it would go against the terms of our tenant contracts." A scoff sounded from one of the woodsmen helping secure one of the poles for the canvas. Countess Beaumont gave him the barest of glances, but she clearly didn't like his reaction to her statement. "Just to be sure," Liam said, "have you seen these contracts?" "Why, yes, of course I have." "What do they say?" "Well, House Beaumont has around 5,000 of them and each is negotiated with the... This would be a hide of land for agricultural tenants, but House Beaumont doesn't have any of those. The equivalent for forestry would be a combination of copses and generational woodlots that produce a volume of export sufficient to trade for other necessities. Honestly, the terms are very generous. The copses are more than enough to sustain a single household, so the generational woodlots are essentially a reward for field service." "What's a generational woodlot?" Liam asked. "A plot of managed woodland where trees are left to grow until maturity," the Countess answered. "It's not a formal term. Copses provide wood for fuel and minor woodcrafts, while generational woodlots provide timber for construction, shipbuilding, and other large-scale projects. Though we call it generational, trees managed this way are harvested every 10 to 150 years, depending on the type." Liam's eyes went to the trees growing alongside the road. Those most easily accessed had been coppiced, while the crowns of much taller trees could be seen deeper within each tenancy. He had lived most of his life in and around highly developed human lands, so many of the sights he saw now were new to him. "What else comes with a tenant's contract?" Liam asked. "The rest are the usual terms one would find anywhere in Riestize," Lady Beaumont answered. "Why do you ask?" "Some things don't match up with what I've been told on the way here," Liam replied. "Or maybe I'm missing something somewhere. Is someone claiming that our tenants don't hold those terms?" "Not exactly. I guess the best way to put it is that they're technically holding those terms. What I don't get is that your people should be doing well if everything's as you say. The reality is that they're struggling." He scanned the faces of the woodsmen around him, while holding the last of the timbers that required tying. As far as he knew, all of them shared a similar story to Reed's. None of them displayed the same callous edge as hardened criminals from towns and cities. Instead, they all just seemed like rough individuals who had become brigands to survive lean times. "Hey, Reed." "Yeah? What do you think she's missing in all this?" "I think you said it yourself. Reality." It was an easy enough explanation to accept. Countess Beaumont had lived in Rue-Bloom-Rocher for her entire life. The only information that she had concerning her family's territory was whatever her father conveyed to her. Her late father had also spared no expense to maintain his daughter's lifestyle, suggesting that, at least when it came to their presence in the city, he wanted to put up a prosperous front. Combined with the Countess' reaction upon learning of House Beaumont's true situation, a case of being woefully out of touch was the likely reason why she could say everything that she had with a straight face. As Liam was about to finish hanging the canvas over the wagon, a faint set of wheel tracks veering off of the road caught his attention. "Is that a road to one of the lumber villages?" Liam asked. "Yeah," Reed said. "Should be 2 or 3 of them down the valley." "Why don't we stop by the nearest one? Lady Beaumont can see how things are for herself." "Up to you." Liam turned to Countess Beaumont. "What do you think, my lady?" "I don't mind doing as you suggest," the Countess replied, "but we've hardly made the proper preparations for a court visit." "It doesn't have to be an official visit," Liam said. "Actually, how did your father handle those?" "From what I could gather from our records, my Lord Father assigned magistrates to oversee clusters of villages across our fief. As you may have noticed, having an itinerant court in this type of landscape is nigh impossible. Instead, the magistrates manage the village chiefs and deliver their seasonal reports with collected rents to the manor." Everything she said still sounded pretty reasonable. Liam hopped off of the Countess' wagon, jogging up to the head of the caravan to discuss their detour with Olin. The wiry man grimaced in response, looking over his shoulder to the lead wagon. "I'll go wherever," he said, "but that merchant won't. He's got a schedule to keep." "Where does that leave us?" "The merchant keeps going and we don't," Olin shrugged. "My men were using one of the merchant's empty wagons to haul their bags, so they'll have to carry their supplies if you're taking this detour. Countess Beaumont needs to see what's going on with her people with her own eyes," Liam said. "Adding a day to our trip will be worth it." Liam worried that the merchant would be left undefended with the 8 fingers leaving him, but it turned out that some of the heavily armed men were his guards. Just in case, he went to consult with Reed about the dangers they might face. "Hey, Reed." "Yeah? If we are attacked by something out here, what would it be?" A horny moose maybe. It's rutting time for 'em. Anything more dangerous than that?" "Hey, don't underestimate those things. I'd take on a tiger over one of them any day. Anything stronger'd be a magical beast or a monster, and those don't play by the normal rules." "If you're worried about the merchant," Olin said from behind them, "don't be. That old man's been profiting off of this side of the county since my grandfather's time. He knows how to run his business." Ahead of them, the merchant's caravan has already put the intersection far behind it. Something was off about what Olin had said, but Liam couldn't quite put his finger on it. "Did the merchant say anything?" "No, I'm starting to think that all of Riestize is that way," Liam said. "It mostly is," Olin said. "And it's better that way." Liam kept his opinion of Olin's statement to himself. Once Countess Beaumont's entourage was ready to go, they followed the lane leading down into the forested valley below. He rejoined the Countess, walking through the tall grass alongside the wagon. "How's the ride now?" Liam asked. "Much improved, thank you," the young noblewoman smiled. "Would you like to join us?" He peeked over the side of the wagon. Lady Beaumont's blankets now covered the wagon bed, and the baggage of Reed's gang was arranged near the back, forming a makeshift wall. Unfurled bedrolls hung over every side. "Why are all the bedrolls out?" Liam asked. "Because they stink," Claire said as she wrinkled her nose. Reed and them don't even remember the last time they were washed. I see. Overall, the changes transformed the wagon into a nicely cushioned box. The smell would hopefully go away later. Liam produced his heating hoop from his pack. Try using this inside, Liam said. I'm not sure how well it'll work in an open wagon, but it's probably better than nothing. Claire reached out to retrieve the magic item. Her brow set in a look of concentration as she fiddled with the device. Liam's attention turned back to the Countess. Are you familiar with the village we're visiting, my lady? What is the village called? Lady Beaumont asked. Liam looked over at Reed. Spruce Landing, Reed told them. It's a little place along a little river, just like a few hundred other places in this county. I'm familiar with what the records say about Spruce Landing, the Countess said. Since it's near the town, it was one of the first villages I took a look at after I arrived at the estate. As Mr. Reed suggests, it may be considered an average village in the county. Did you notice anything strange about it in House Beaumont's records? Liam asked. Not particularly, the Countess answered. If anything, one could say that it's a model village. The woodsmen within earshot visibly bristled at the noblewoman's statement. Liam released the edge of the wagon, dropping back down to walk beside Reed. They are not gonna put an arrow in her, are they? He said in a low voice. I'm surprised I'm so angry myself, Reed replied. I thought I put all of it behind me a long time ago. I can't imagine how you feel, Liam said. I grew up poor in a town. The people living out in the countryside always seemed like rich people to me. Seriously? A tenant's contract is basically a legal right to exist, Liam said. I know it might not be the case here, but tenants usually get enough. They're probably not doing it for any particular person, but to maintain the order under them as a whole. Being poor in a town or city means you're a nobody, and nobody cares if a nobody starves or dies because there are 1,000 other nobodies ready to replace those who don't make it. Cities are supposed to be wealthy and all, but most of that wealth goes into the purses of the guilds. It's super hard to get into the guilds, so, if you're not a part of the guilds, life in the city is hell. He supposed that he had lucked out on that part after being picked up by Baroness Radnik and her friends. He had gotten a chance to show off his skills and ended up getting trained by the most infamous assassin guild in the region. After that, he became a government employee, which was extraordinarily difficult for a common citizen of Rhys to become. Then again, if one categorized organizations like the Eight Fingers as institutions, one could, in a crooked sort of way. The conditions in Rhys created all sorts of disgruntled people looking for a way out of their situation. In the case of Beaumont County, it created a bunch of disgruntled rangers. Like Reed and his gang, they ended up becoming syndicate thugs who helped sweep away the old order to replace it with their own. Living out in the country has its downsides, too, Reed said. It can take weeks for adventurers to respond to attacks from the wilderness, and they don't involve themselves in domestic disputes as a general rule. Isn't the Adventurer Guild sort of responsible for the crime in Rhys? Liam asked. How do you figure? It's something I heard from one of the Sorcerer's Kingdom's nobles, Liam said. Adventurers are promoted as a cheap security option relative to the usual knights and armsmen. The cost-cutting that they did resulted in them losing their ability to resist challenges to their authority. But that can't be. Liam and Reed turned their heads to find Countess Beaumont watching them from the wagon, her slender fingers turning white as she gripped the bedrolls draped over the edge of the vehicle. The royal court itself supports the Adventurer Guild. Her voice was heated. They've even gone so far as to allocate a portion of the budget to subsidize adventurer commissions in the poorer territories. Why would the House of Lords approve of something that would undermine their power? You seem pretty excited about this, Liam said. That's because the ordinance was spearheaded by none other than Rena Taylor Chardellon Ryle Vayself, the Golden Princess herself. Then I guess your Golden Princess is trying to destroy the country. Nonsense, Lady Beaumont sniffed. She isn't known as the Golden Princess for nothing, you know. Not everything she proposes is passed into law, but all of it has been beneficial for the kingdom. That's a fail there, I guess. According to Countess Wagner, everything that Princess Rena did was terrible for the kingdom of Re-Estais. Only those who were superficial, impulsive, emotional, or blindly adherent to arbitrary moral principles saw what the Golden Princesses did as beneficial. If one measured things in terms of hard realities and unfeeling numbers, the destruction that Princess Rena wrought became plain. Her proposals enhanced her reputation as a benevolent royal in the eyes of the ignorant while weakening the national power of her country at the same time. While the reasons why she was doing this were unknown, her objective was perfectly clear. Up until the founding of the Sorceress Kingdom, Princess Rena was accelerating the downfall of Re-Estais to the empire. At the same time, she was ensuring her safety by enhancing her public reputation and purposely failing to implement proposals that the empire's spies in Re-Estais' royal court would convey to the empire to be implemented there, making her invaluable for her ideas. Now that the Sorceress Kingdom was around, she had forsaken her old prospect in favor of the new ascendant power. One of the few instructions that Liam and the dozens of other agents investigating Re-Estais had received from Lady Albedo was to keep an eye out for the same sort of duplicity now that Princess Rena had thrown her lot in with the Sorceress Kingdom. Personally, he thought someone like her wasn't worth keeping around. They might not have been princesses, but Liam had known his fair share of people like that growing up in Facet Town. Their scheming inevitably blew up at the expense of everyone they had entangled, and the damage that they caused was never worth what they supposedly brought to the table. He wasn't in any position to influence decisions, however. All he could do was trust that his superiors were making the correct decisions and focus on his job. Their arrival in Spruce Landing was a quiet one, mostly due to the villagers making themselves scarce upon Countess Beaumont's arrival. Unlike a farming village, lumber villages had an abundance of construction materials, allowing the residents of Spruce Landing to build themselves sturdy log cabins clustered over the riverbank. Wisps of smoke rising from their chimneys gave away the fact that the villagers were at home despite their disappearance well beforehand. Countess Beaumont's wagon stopped on a flat and dry clearing at the end of the road surrounded by seasoning timber. Claire gestured for Reed to come over. "Milady wishes to speak to you, Mr. Reed." "My lady," the Countess hissed. Liam exchanged a look with Reed, urging him forward with a motion of his head. The woodsman gave his gambesine a tug before taking a deep breath and walking over. "You called, milady?" "Go to the back," Claire whispered over the side of the wagon. Reed did as he was instructed, muttering darkly under his breath. Both he and Liam furrowed their brows at the sight that awaited them. The back of the wagon was open, revealing the wall of packs belonging to Reed's men. A broad plank had been laid over them, forming a makeshift table or desk. Countess Beaumont gazed down at them from where she was sitting on the other side. "Mr. Reed," she said. "Locate Magistrate Woodland and bring him to me." "Bring him here? Don't meetings with the local lord usually happen at the magistrate's residence?" "You have your instructions, Mr. Reed," Claire said from her place behind the Countess' shoulder. The woodsman's dark mutterings returned as he stalked away in the direction of the river. Liam stared blankly at nothing in particular, wondering what was going on. "How does it look, Mr. Liam?" Countess Beaumont asked. "How does what look?" Liam asked back. "This," the young noblewoman said as she gestured loosely around herself with a white-gloved hand. Trying to transform this vehicle into a luxury carriage was obviously out of the question, so I made do with turning it into a mobile office. Was that what it was? Liam figured that most people would mistake it for a roadside stall. All it needed was some merchandise to display. Reed had a point, Liam said. Itinerant courts are usually hosted by the local magistrate or village chief. That may be so, the Countess admitted, but I quite like this. It's warm and comfortable and I don't have to go anywhere. Additionally, if I hold court at the magistrate's house, it will turn into a village-wide affair and will be stuck here until at least tomorrow morning. Considering how many unaddressed issues the village has accrued since last winter, it wouldn't be strange to be delayed for a week. Liam couldn't argue against that particular point. He couldn't afford to add days and weeks to his mission. Speaking of food, Countess Beaumont said, I'm positively famished. What's for lunch? He sent a look at the woodsmen nearby. One by one, they came forward to drop off the results of their foraging on the open back door of the wagon. Liam frowned as a small mountain of nuts, mushrooms, berries, fresh greens, and herbs formed before him. How did you find all of this? Liam asked. Dunno, one of the woodsmen said. It just happens. Can we turn this into something for everyone? We usually just snack on the move. How much time do we have? Liam looked up at the two girls behind the wagon's desk. I've never held court before, Countess Beaumont said, but I can't imagine that this particular discussion will take longer than 2 hours. Can something be prepared in that time, Claire? You are asking me? Claire replied incredulously, I mean, I'll see what I can do, milady. Maybe some kind of soup. Reed's men got a fire going while Claire prepared the ingredients and threw them into a large cookpot. She set the nuts and berries aside, tossing them into a set of bags. There were too many herbs to use as well, so she hung those in bundles under the canvas. The woodsmen each volunteered slices of sausage to add to the meal. Within minutes, a somewhat appetizing aroma mingled with the scents of wood smoke and pine. Claire was filling bowls and handing them out by the time Reed returned with a nervous-looking man in plain garb. That took a while, Liam said. Did he try to run away? Nah, Reed replied, he hid in his house and barred the door. Is that normal? It is around here. Had to chop my way in with an axe. I hope you didn't hurt any of the villagers, Liam said. The villagers? Reed laughed, they locked themselves away, too. No one was gonna come out to help this old shitbag. You know him? No, but I know his type. They're everywhere in the Azalisian marches, maybe everywhere in the kingdom. Hey, that's the Countess Beaumont in front of you. On your knees, pig. Reed kicked the man in the back of the knees and planted a gauntleted hand on his shoulder. For his part, Magistrate Woodland did little more than cry and whimper as he was dragged in and forced to kneel. That's hardly necessary, Mr. Reed, the Countess frowned over her desk. Find the magistrate a serviceable seat. One of the nearby woodsmen dragged a log over and planted it on the ground squarely in front of the Countess' wagon desk thing. The young noblewoman calmly folded her hands in front of her. Now, Magistrate Woodland, she said with a friendly smile, I believe you and I have much to discuss.